Hello, everyone. Welcome to a special exclusive interview here we're doing for the YouTube page. We don't do a ton of interviews anymore with guests, but we definitely wanted to make sure we took some time to have THC join us. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule to jump on and do a quick interview here with us.
Thank you for having me, and no problem anytime.
Awesome. Awesome. So we ask two very cliched interview questions throughout the interview process. One comes first and then one at the end. So those are the only two cliche ones, but we'll get the first one out of the way here. But just kind of wanted to know what got you interested in the world of wrestling. Was there like a particular company, a particular wrestler that drew you in, or was it something else that kind of hooked you and made you want to pursue this?
So I started watching wrestling around the age of 5, and the people who got me into it were my older brothers and also my cousin Keisha. She was a really huge fan of The Rock. So when I was living in Aberdeen, Maryland for a few years as a child, I would sit on her lap with she and her husband and just watch Monday Night Raw. So that was what got me interested in wrestling, but what actually got me into wrestling was attending Ring of Honor events at the ECW arena and just watching the athleticism and seeing like how they put these matches together. I was very interested in figuring out how do they go about their training, because I was ignorant to everything. Like I didn't know that you had to attend a wrestling school in order to learn how to train. So
Right.
that's what got.
So with Ring of Honor being kind of what drew you in, how did the news yesterday kind of hit you with them, having one final big bang here in December, and then it's a kind of we'll see what happens in 2022 situation?
My heart is broken because I have so many memories with Ring of Honor, and just seeing like all of the talent that started off there and to see where they're at now, and then to see, they have this young roster that, they're kind of left in limbo, like trying to figure out what to do next. And I just hope that, everyone who is affected by it just, I'm praying for you, and I hope that, your future is bright and that you find your place in the industry.
Yeah, it was kind of shocking. I mean, the one company that seemed to take the pandemic most seriously out of all of them, and did right by all of their contracts, all of their talent. So fingers crossed that the retooling is just that, and we get to see them come back stronger than ever in 2022. But hats off to them as well for kind of taking care of their guys and girls, and just I'm anxious for the final show here in December. If that does end up being the final one, I'm sure they'll do everything right. But I'm hopeful that they can retool and come back as they plan to.
Yeah, I'm trying to stay optimistic about it, because Ring of Honor has such a rich history. I can't see it just, going away completely. So I hope that they're able to like rebrand or whatever the case may be and come back and bring everyone that was released back, because these are talented people that deserve to have a spot there and deserve to have a platform. So I'm just praying for them at the moment.
Yeah, and if there's any company that I think can do that in terms of like, the tier, I would say the tier under a WWE, I think Ring of Honor is one that takes it seriously enough that we'll see that happen. So, like you said, hopeful, keep everyone in mind. But moving on then, I mean, you said you were kind of ignorant about the wrestling training school, myself included. I was kind of ignorant in terms of indie wrestling overall. Everyone obviously knows the big companies, but there's a lot of wrestling companies here in PA that I was kind of ignorant to before we started this podcast and really got into that scene. So how did you go about, deciding what you were going to do in terms of next steps, choosing a trainer, finding, a trainer or a school, and, finding your way into the wrestling industry?
So it took, for me, like the next step was to do my research on Google to find, first off, I had to figure out like, oh, you have to go to a school in order to learn how to wrestle. So once I figured that part out, that's when I started to Google schools in the area. And I'm based in Philadelphia, so it was pretty easy to find like schools in the surrounding area to train at. But that was the problem. It's so many that I couldn't decide which one to go to. So I was talking to my ex-boyfriend's brother-in-law, and he's a huge wrestling fan, and he suggested, why don't you try Combat Zone Wrestling? So I decided to contact the owner of the company, and I decided to go there, do a tryout, which was brutal. And, you know, that's where my wrestling career started, in Combat Zone Wrestling back in 2018.
Gotcha. And you know, the CZW crowd is not for the faint of heart. They're typically a pretty active crowd. It's been years since I've gone to one of their events, but back it was probably around that time. It was probably the last ones I was going to, and the crowd was, you know, kind of the same, living up to their reputation. So, how did you find the CZW crowd? You know, with that being kind of your first introduction to the wrestling scene, did that kind of prepare you then as best they could for, you know, what you're going to see? Because I think if I've heard people say if you can wrestle in front of the CZW crowd, you can kind of wrestle anywhere. So is that kind of the experience you had as well?
To be honest, my time in CZW was like I kind of cracked under pressure.
Okay.
It was really hard for me to get through my training at CZW because it's just so, it wasn't so much the training, it was more so the mental factor and having to deal with the different personalities in the locker room, and also me battling with feeling like, because to me, even though I grew up watching WWE, I kind of felt like I was an outsider, because I come from the modeling world, I come from the fashion world. I didn't, you know, start training immediately after high school, or I think I stopped watching wrestling back in like 2007. So I was completely ignorant to everything. So coming into CZW, it was really tough for me because I just felt like this outsider that was out of place, and I felt like I didn't belong. So just having problems here and there and being inconsistent with my training, that's what led me, oh yeah, and also getting injured. That's what led me to, you know, take a break from wrestling. So.
Gotcha. Okay.
Answered your question, but
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you know, with you having that background in modeling and fashion, you know, how hands-on were you then with, you know, creation of your own ring gear? You know, did you get a hand in designing, or did you just kind of take what you had and turn it into something?
no. So Pro Wrestling Gear UK, they made my first set of gear, and I basically drew up what I wanted, which it was pretty standard gear. Because I wasn't too sure, you know, since I was struggling with my identity while training at CZW, I didn't know exactly who I wanted to be. So my gear was super basic, and I just sent it off to the seamstress, and they made my gear accordingly. So yeah, I am pretty hands-on when it comes to like designing my character and my gear and everything. Like I sketch all the time. So.
Gotcha. Now, in terms of your character, are there things that you've used from, you know, your personal life, your heritage, you know, anything specifically that you were like, I want to take this aspect of my life and make sure that it is part of who I am in the wrestling ring?
Absolutely. So my name is Taylor Holly Combs, the acronym THC. So I am a huge marijuana advocate. And the reason why I went with that name is because it's kind of like, you know, a lot of people in the industry, they use marijuana. But when it comes to women in the industry that use marijuana, they kind of look down on you for that. Like when I was at CZW, people treated me as if I was like some type of junkie or something because I smoked weed. A lot of my trainers didn't approve of it. And I'm just like, I'm getting thrown into a mat and I have to work out like twice daily. So my body is constantly sore. So instead of using pills and stuff to deal with the pain, I would rather smoke marijuana. That the only side effect that it gives me is, oh, I laugh a lot and I'm going to sit in front of my TV and eat junk food, possibly. So yeah, so I wanted to incorporate that in my wrestling character just to show that, you know, you're not less than human or anything just because you smoke marijuana. You can use it for medicinal purposes, and a lot of people use it for anxiety too.
Right. Yeah. Which is a huge benefit for a lot of people in the wrestling industry. So it's great to kind of try to break that stigma that goes along with that, because I think that a lot of people could benefit from, you know, having some type, you know, even if it's not that, you know, facing the anxiety and making sure that you're dealing with it in some way.
Yeah.
go a long way for a lot of people in a lot of locker rooms. So that's a great thing. Is there anything else that you've kind of like taken from maybe like a pop culture or like literature, music, anything like that that you've taken and kind of used towards the creation of your character as well?
Well, another thing that I've taken is, since I come from the modeling world, I've also been like heavily involved in the Philly underground art scene. Like I used to attend underground parties and raves and stuff. So I've been trying little by little to incorporate that into my character just to show, it's almost like I'm trying to, how do I want to say this? Like, I want people to feel like I represent them. Like I'm just like you. Because also along with that, I have borderline personality disorder and I have bipolar disorder. So I try to be as open, with myself as possible just to show people, hey, I'm just like you. I come from a really rough neighborhood and you can also get to this level too. Like you don't have to feel like just because, I have a mental illness or I come from the art scene that you can't, make it big.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, if anyone, that's watching follows you on social media, you're pretty open with your other hobbies outside of wrestling, with DJing, skateboarding, and of course, art, fashion, stuff like that. So, what do you think those different outlets kind of, are there ways that those can attribute to, getting prepared for the ring, getting comfortable for being in front of cameras, stuff like that when it comes to wrestling?
Um, Definitely with the skateboarding that I do, that has helped me tremendously with overcoming my fear of like performing in front of other people because I'm super shy and like I said, I have borderline personality disorder and bipolar disorder. So with those two disorders, you'd have to deal with like extreme social phobia and constantly feeling like you're not good enough or looking at yourself as if you're some type of villain. And, with skateboarding, it kind of like made me unlock almost like the superpower, like, hey, like I can do this. I can perform in front of other people. And also with DJing too, it's so like I spin vinyl, I'm not a CDJ. So it's super tedious. And like to do that in front of other people, it's like so nerve wracking, but you kind of get over that fear, once you do it over and over. It's the same as wrestling and training.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Um, so you've posted online, you're kind of recovering, body transformation, recovering from an injury. So how's everything going at this point? Do you have a timeline in terms of getting back, picking up the training a little bit more and goals for getting back into the ring at this point?
Okay, so I just had my first training session last Saturday at Super Crazy Pro Wrestling. Shout out to them. But yeah, so what I'm trying to do is just get myself mentally and physically right, so that I can stay on track. My injury kind of like set me back like a month or two. Like I was out of training for like 2 months.
Mhm.
Now that I can actually fully put my weight on my ankle now, that's when I was like, okay, I'm getting back in the ring.
Right.
And I'm still doing light duty at the gym. Like I don't work legs as much. And if I do work legs, I have to do body weight training. Like I can't use machines or anything like that. And I want to say hopefully by December, that's when you'll see more of THC in the ring.
Okay. Awesome. Now, and this is kind of a tough question just because of, the landscape of indie wrestling with the pandemic and everything going on. Shows aren't going on as frequently as they used to, not as, fans are used to. So, we usually say, within the next year, next 3 years, what do you want to say, like set goals for yourself, stuff like that. So with that being said, with everything going on, do you have anything that like 2022, this is what I want to accomplish for my wrestling career?
Well, for the first things first, I want to stay on track with my training and my wrestling to put so that I can put myself out there more. And like I just, feel like since I'm in this new company, which is Super Crazy Pro Wrestling, I have my eyes on their women's championship
Okay.
because we do have one, we just don't have a champion yet. And my goal, hopefully either by the end of this year or by the beginning of next year, is to become their first ever women's champion.
Awesome. Awesome. It's a great goal to have. I mean, it's cool that you get to be, involved with an up and coming company too, because I mean, a lot of places are trying to do this, especially with the pandemic. And sometimes, they don't get to where they want to be. So it's awesome that there's already these goals that are being set, for you and for the company to kind of hit these with everything going on. So I promised you only two cliche questions. The other one that we always ask to everyone that joins us is the dream match question. So we kind of like to put a little bit of a stipulation on it. So if you can book your dream match, you can pick any wrestler you want, living or deceased. You can also wrestle for a specific title. You can pick any venue you want in the world. If you want a crazy stipulation, like I want to wrestle, Eddie Guerrero in a ladder match at Madison Square Garden, the choice is yours, but what would that dream match be for you?
Well, I hope not to bore you with my answer because I just want to keep it basic, but one of the people that I've been loving as of lately is Trisha Duran, I believe her name is.
Yep.
I've seen her do kind of like work in WWE and stuff like that, and just seeing somebody like her, I feel like I'm represented, and I feel like I would love to go head to head with her too, just because I feel like she's amazing in the ring. So
yep.
Yeah, so like I don't know about a stipulation. Like I'd rather just keep it plain and simple, and let's just go one-on-one. Like,
yeah,
no need for a stipulation.
Awesome. All right. I mean, that's a perfect opponent to pick because she's also kind of carving her name in the industry right now. So it's cool to see her rise as well. She was never interviewed by us. She did one of our Mad Libs things a while ago. She's just so down to earth and awesome to talk to. So it's cool to see like her getting the recognition she is lately because it's been a long time coming for her. And then before we wrap it up, if you're watching the video, obviously you can see a lot of ink done. So do you have any specific tattoos that are like more important to you? And, how do you use getting tattoos as kind of like, some people use it as therapy. So is that the deal for you as well? Or is it just because you love art and you want to have it on you?
So it's kind of like a mixture of both. So I started getting tattooed very young. I got my first tattoo when I was 16 years old. And after that, it was just like tattoo after tattoo after tattoo. So I want to say the most important tattoo to me is the one on my chest, and it says valid, if you can see. Mm-hmm. And it's just basically my own stamp of approval, and to not really seek validation from other people, to seek it within myself first, and then it will follow. But like tattoos for me, yes, it's a combination of like therapy and self-expression because excuse me, Jesus, I need to get a drink. I'm sorry.
No problem.
But for me, being an artist and coming from the fashion world and just coming from the rave scene, I like to put it on my body.
Nice. Okay.
Woo. Dry throat.
It happens. No worries. So then before we let you go, last thing we like to do is just kind of let you plug yourself, social media, let people know where they can follow you, upcoming shows where people can meet you if there are any on the horizon with, the crazy world we're in right now. Anything that we may have forgotten that you want to point out, but the floor is kind of yours. So let us know, where we can find you, where we can follow you and everything like that.
Okay, excuse me for 1 second. So I'm only on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. So my Instagram is just Taylor Holly Combs. My Twitter is THC Badlands. And my Facebook is just Taylor Holly Combs. So you can find me on all three of those platforms. And also Super Crazy Pro Wrestling. We will be having a show November 13th at 1030 Delsey Drive in Deptford, New Jersey.
All right, perfect. Well, if you're in the area, make sure you attend. There's not a ton of indie wrestling going on right now. So if there's a show near you, make sure you're attending and supporting. We thank you so much for your time here today. We're anxious to see, that return to the ring, hoisting that title that you're going for in 2022 and, seeing your rise from there. But we appreciate the time. We'll definitely keep track of your career and we'll definitely have you on in the future again.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
Absolutely. It's our pleasure.